Welcome to the Education Leadership Podcast, where we bring stories, advice, and insights from world-class leaders right to you. Welcome back to the Education Podcast, where we help you grow as a leader. I believe that when leaders level up, everybody wins. Today, we're talking about self-management, how you as a leader can help build high-performing teams by enabling the power of self-management, where people actually own their work, not through more rules or control, but by changing how decisions get made, how information flows, and how power gets shared. Our guest is Nicholas Thomson, founder of Iceberg. He's worked inside high-performing companies, the ones that look great on the surface but leave people burnt out. Now he helps teams shift towards self-management, where people have a real say, real responsibility, and real ownership. In this episode, we'll dig into what actually works, how to make the shift, and what you can do right now, whether you're running your own business, leading a team, or just trying to create a better place to work. So let's get right into it. Nick, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. So just for our guest, all right, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, where to start? It's been a journey that I have extremely appreciated from the start. I was even back from school days. I had the opportunity of living overseas for quite a bit of my life, and including South Africa for a year. Then went back to uni and then jumped back into the corporate world from then onwards, which was a great experience. And then from that corporate experience, I knew after a few years there's an opportunity for me to then expand and see the world again. I got that itch. It had to be scratched. And as I went back overseas, I had a new scope to life, and I was like, I have to find why I'm here. Who am I? What's the reason for my existence right now? And I had a gut sense that what I was going through in terms of the university or schooling career and corporate, I realised that there's something more. There's more essence here that I'm missing here. So then to fast forward a bit, I ended up living in Canada for a bit, and then from there, the company based in Australia brought me back across, and I've been there for the last 4 years. And now, very recently, I've had the opportunity of now diving into something that I really believe can make a difference. And I'm about a year or so into the job now, into the role of making an impact. And quite frankly, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. So it's been a journey, and I've loved it. Fair to say that going overseas has been an eye-opener. Being in a country like Africa where there's 13 cultures within one environment, I'm like, holy heck, how do you even comprehend that? Yeah. And it made me realise there's no right way to do things overseas. It comes down to people's worldviews, experiences and values and so forth. So incredible experience. I'm so appreciative for.
Yeah, and I definitely highly recommend that. I mean, I've served a ministry in Texas, gone out of my comfort zone, out of my country, seen the world, meet different people. You get exposed to different perspectives, different cultures, and that really does shape and change the way that you look at things. Yeah. There's more to the world than what's in your own bubble, right? 100%. So you've traveled across the world, which is amazing. Yeah. You gained all these experiences. How did you arrive at this concept and passion for self-management, especially when it comes to leadership? Like how did you arrive there, but also what is it?
Yes, so two parts to the story, and it was again that build-up of tension I felt within me going through university, realising there's more to it than the credibility you gain from it and the studies, etc. And then it got into the corporate world, or the business I worked for first off, and I gained so much from that experience. So it's not taking anything away from that. However, I cannot deny that there was an underlying experience I went through, and as much as I was doing extremely well on paper, performing well, delivering recognition, results and so forth, and adding value to the business in the way I could see fit, there was like an underlying thing that was growing within me, and as I was going home, one day in particular, I remember I was feeling extremely burnt out. I was extremely depressed. I felt like I was just unfulfilled in so many ways, and I was thought to myself, what's going on here? Like, my external motivations or my exterior of images is looking fantastic. Why am I feeling this way? And it got to a point where I would call it my first major crisis moment in my life, where I had a friend of ours, a very close dear friend, that passed away in a bus crash. the one weekend, and it was on a Saturday, and I thought, heck, this is the first real life experience coming into, so the grief and all that, all the emotions I was handling with myself. And then I went to work the following Monday, and I realised many of the people in the workplace knew what happened, yet it was very uncomfortable for me to express that. And then it got to a time where I had a connection with my boss, and this is nothing against my boss at that time, it was just simply the conditions that were set up within that systemic environment that we had. And I realised that we went through our usual whip, our objectives, setting that, and it got to a point where they first started off with what the objectives of the week looked like, even though they knew of the weekend I just had. Then it got to the very end of that, and they asked me, how are you feeling? I broke down in tears. This is a corporate environment, and it's something I was very embarrassed by and ashamed and so forth. And yet something struck me in that moment, that in that reality of the situation, how is it we've deprioritized humanity in a sense? And again, it's nothing against that corporate businesses work with, they're brilliant. It's just simply the dynamic of the situation required going for the objectives versus how I'm truly feeling. So that was one piece. And the second piece was, so often I was losing motivation, intrinsic motivation. And I thought, this is tough. Like I'm hitting my objectives, I'm setting the parameters for myself and overachieving. And then it got to a point where the targets just increased without the why component. And I'm like, why am I actually doing this? What's the reason for this? I'm now leaning more towards extrinsic motivation for a paycheck, for a bonus, and so forth. And that works to a degree. Well, it worked for me until it didn't. And then I was almost using up all the fumes within me at the end of that barrel, trying to keep myself motivated. And so the other question that I had in my mind is like, what is the purpose of this, rather than just adding an arbitrary target on top of another? Like, why are we doing this? And there's so much that could be unlocked within the energy of who we are as humans. So two big things in summary of that. One was, yes, how have we deprioritized humanity and therefore unleashing potential in that sense? And two, purpose. So profit is important, but purpose needs to guide it. But purpose cannot have at least direct itself without profit to fuel it either. So it's a paradox of the two. So two stories there that I would say would anchor me as to why I made the shift today. What came of that? It's a long answer, I realise. However, what came of that is I came across research, and this research highlighted, this is probably about 7-8 years ago now, highlighted how these organisations in Europe, Asia, America and so forth have already figured out a new way or new management paradigm or new organisational structure that's coming through. And I thought to myself, like, this sounds audacious. Like, this sounds a bit ridiculous going here with this, but what? But let's keep going and let's go through the reading of it. And it turns out these businesses have figured out how to, one, deal with the tensions of today's world, from senior leadership, middle management, frontline members, etc., and how they've actually managed to remove the structures that we've been defaulted to for the last X amount of years, 300 plus years, to deal with the complexity of today's world. And the world around us is so fast-paced, it's so hard to keep up with it, let alone AI and these automations coming through, the stakeholders you're dealing with and so forth. And the frame-up of this article was they basically, rather than come up with a unicorn product to steal market share, innovation, and so forth, they actually said to themselves, what is it about the structures today that we can unleash humanity at its best? How can we actually bring forth a new model or innovate to a degree where those who are close to the information have the processes and frameworks in place to act on that, adapt to the market volatility, adapt to the complexity around them? And the thing is that these businesses who've actually molded to self-management took a risk, 100%. Like, it's a massive risk, but it's also a risk when you bring on a new product or a new employee and so forth. They decided to make that move, and what came of it was phenomenal results. Sure, they had an inkling that it was going to work, but the idea of it was that there was an imperative that the way we're structuring business today is not unlocking or unleashing human potential, and it's not aligned with who we are, and we're requiring something radically different. So hence why there's self-management, or in other fancy terms they call it radically decentralized organizations start to come forward.
What a powerful and beautiful, I guess, a journey and story. I mean, sorry about your friend. And I guess it must have been really hard going through that. I mean, I lost a friend who just recently had his unveiling after a couple of years. My son is named after him as well. So I really feel for you. But at the same time, something beautiful came out of it in terms of, you started searching purpose. Sounded like obviously a tough time at work as well. And you mentioned the words life crisis, almost hit rock bottom. And I feel like there's something about hitting rock bottom that really gets people to start thinking like, okay, like there's got to be more. I've got to do more. I feel like I need to be more. I can. And then you came across some sort of research.
Yes.
That really caught your attention, especially during that time and journey in your life. Around different structures, unleashing people's potential, or teams' potential as well. So tell us about self-management, because that's something that really stuck out to you. And you talked about looking at how we innovate structures so we can really enable teams to perform and be their best. What is self-management? What does that look like for our leaders?
Yeah, I think I'll backstep a little bit here, because it may be worthwhile diving into some of the key tensions that start to unlock that as well. And so I start off with senior leaders. Senior leaders, it almost feels like they've got an unwritten rule attached to their CV or job application where they need to be busy to beyond capability, like they cannot manage the processes or the life commitments they have, whether it's from chasing, creating invoices, looking at the structures of the business, thinking about strategy all the time, keeping your team motivated, keeping customer satisfaction levels up there, replying to emails, you name it, and creating presentations day on day. Like it's just endless. But that's the design of a hierarchical pyramid, is that all lines and information converges at the top. And the thing is that a lot of leaders are making decisions without the full context of the decision. And again, it's not their fault. It's just the conditions that's been set. And so of course, burnout is extraordinarily high. Leadership dependency is extraordinarily high. There's a lot of safeguards in place, which again, it allows business leaders to stay within the parameters and control mechanisms of the business. Great. Yet it's still not adapting quick enough to the market conditions. So again, there's so many tension points at the top, and they carry how much emotional weight, risk, and liability for the business. Middle managers are like firefighters. They're in a job where they need to appease the senior leaders with these arbitrary targets that's put in place, and they also need to keep the team engaged. It's a hell of a dynamic to put yourself in. And then you have your frontline members, and like these stats that's just everywhere. They're picked up, and whether it's from McKinsey or Harvard Business Review. And the one that stood out to me is that only 23% or a quarter of businesses have their frontline members engaged. Like, wow. And if that's the case, like, what's the biggest expense on a P&L? Labour costs, salaries, and so forth. And yet that's the biggest potential unlock. So there's something, and these tensions aren't going away. That's the thing. And a tension's not good or bad, not right or wrong. It's just something that needs to be addressed. And it doesn't matter how many layers of hierarchy we put in place, etc. It doesn't take away the focus of what actually needs to be unleashed here. So how does it work within self-management? Self-management is a piece where rather than, it's like a unicorn opportunity here, where leaders can now focus on restructuring the business in a sense where the frontline members, who are, by the way, closest to the pride and pain of the product, the client, the service, or what's happening, they're closest to the market, and they can actually see what's happening in opportunities. It's enabling them with the right control mechanisms in place, or framework, so to speak, to allow them to make decisions, speed up decision making without slowing down the business. but they need to obviously there's ways around this, right? So it's like making a decision, but in order for them to make a better decision, they need information. And if you think of like a living organism, say if I was going to go for a run, like a marathon run tomorrow, there's key things I need to be aware of. One is my blood pressure, my vital signs, and X, Y, and Z. Now that alone is going to be information that I can now use to monitor the pace of my run, rather than sprinting for the first 10 kilometers and then praying the next 30 is going to be a dream run. So the idea here is now that if the fundamental assumption we bring forward is that humans are adults, they're not children, there's no parent-child dynamic in here, they're adults that can handle sensitive information. So therefore, what are the vital signs of a business that they need to be aware of in order to help them make a decision? So i.e., as an example, recently there was a client that's doing a fantastic job bringing this on board, and for the team that was in the front lines with the employees, they need to be aware of what the revenue requirements are to match their budgets, not as a target, but as a healthy understanding. And the healthy understanding of that is now a benchmark they commit themselves to, and then they mobilize as to what's going to be most effective to get that job done. In one case, or twice, they've done this based on what I recall, but they improved their quote by 50% on the job, which was already budgeted for. And the thing is that they required that understanding so they can make better decisions on the job. So information transparency is key. Now, that can be risky. I totally understand that with businesses. However, the idea here is that if we want to unleash potential and we want people to make adult decisions, then of course they need information. And so it's basically looking at how does a self-management structure enable those at the front lines to be not just empowered but fully powerful to make a decision on the spot. And if not, what is the impact of their decision? So we're taking away the safety net as well. It's now exposing them to the reality of the situation, whether it's the pride, pain, or the consequences of that. And yes, it's risk, but then they're also taking a risk. They're taking risks applying to the company. They're applying for the job, working for a business that's going to feed their family. Adults have figured out life, how to be adults. They've got mortgages, kids, etc. So the idea here is how do we actually allow humans to now build another level of consciousness with the right conditions in place to take ownership like the founder or like the CEO and so forth. Start to see how the pressure and the burnout now takes away from the leaders. That's obviously bottlenecked to the top in a pyramid structure, but now it's decentralized. So everyone is carrying the weight of the business, again, like an organism. Last one is that it's now looking at, as the organism metaphor, we're carrying with that, is it's building self-correcting systems in place. So again, like your body temperature will go to 36 degrees. So that's the healthy understanding, right? And if it goes to 37, 38, it will self-correct back into 36. Same as nature. Everything's applied in the same principle. That they will self-correct and adapt and respond to the market conditions. So how do we bring that mentality and mind shift within the organization itself, where everyone's exposed to the reality of the situation and they mobilize accordingly?
That makes sense to me. Around self-management, basically, from what you've shared, self-management is where teams really take ownership, where you equip them with the resources and information, so that requires a level of transparency, basically everything that they need to make informed decisions.
Yeah.
Govern themselves in a way.
Yes.
Right? And I like that analogy of a living organism and nature, and I think you've emphasized this already. There's a lot that we can learn from nature around leadership. Even like teamwork, I always look at like ants and how ants have to work together to kind of get from one branch to another or carry food back to the nest. Think of like wolves and lions and how they hunt together. Yeah. Collectively to achieve an outcome. There's already things like, I feel like these principles are universal. It's not just limited to humans. Like even it's species. Yeah. They all know in order to be effective, we've got to apply these principles, and it comes natural. So basically, what you're saying is, how do we adopt these principles of self-management to really enable the power within our teams.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Do you have any, I guess, examples where leaders or employers have implemented this in the before and after?
Yeah. There's a client of mine that there's a brilliant story. So they were on the brink of liquidation last year, and the beforehand scenario was there's so much dependency on the leader. The leader was at breaking point. I saw it firsthand where if he took on any more responsibility to his day-to-day job, the system would have collapsed, and that was inevitable. And yet they were coming to a point where there was just no alternative like that, and they were looking for ways to get themselves out of this sticky situation. The team were used to an operation manager beforehand. They used to being told and instructed where to go. The team were told to split up in twos and so forth, in pairs, to go to their sites and deal with the clients. And anyway, so there was a lot of less engagement within that matter. Obviously, less engagement has an impact on culture, morale, and so forth. It has a very systemic flow. Then it got to a point with the senior leader that they were basically at a point where we have to try something new. We're at a point where there's no other way around this. And crisis management is very good when it comes to exposing the situation. And it doesn't... Crisis, I think, is a beautiful point of life. Like, it exposes where the gaps are to grow, rather than fear and panic stations to constrict yourself. And this opportunity that came about, this senior leader said, we have to give this a go. We have to be open and curious to a new structure that's going to unlock and unleash their way of doing things going forward, because there's no alternative. And bear in mind, he was receiving comms from the accountants and lawyers saying, like, there's no point proceeding next month. You're about to close up shop. You better let the team know, or at least hold off letting the team know.
So really on the brink.
Really on the brink. Like, I'm talking about no turning back now. And full credit to him, he was like, no, I've been through tough situations before. This is tough, but we're going to hang in there. And we've got a method that there's no other way of trying but this. And so we brought the team together, and we went through basically a workshop around why we're making a shift to self-management, not just the how or what. Like, if I gave them decision-making process or whatever the case is without the why, good luck. Again, it's resulting to extrinsic motivation, not intrinsic. The why and the context is so important to get the buy-in from people on the journey. And so we took them through the why. We showed them from the bigger picture why we're making this movement. It's not just, one, to save the business, it's two, to unleash the true hidden talents that you actually have. And the thing is that we're in a system where it's very much parent-child dynamics. And in their situation, it's like, hang on, you guys are adults. Now, if we list all the things that's associated with the assumptions to that, like, for instance, adults can handle sense information. Adults do turn up to work for something more than just a paycheck. Adults do turn up for something that's bigger than themselves. They do turn up and they can solve problems rather than relying on someone else to solve it for them. If you could list all the fundamental assumptions as to what you believe in humans, all of a sudden you look at the previous model of hierarchy and it doesn't quite fit it. And then you look to self-management, you're like, okay, that does fit. So you go through the why context with them, and then what happens then is they're like, I said to the senior leader from then, it's like, rather than telling them what is required, flip the script, approach them and say, I have no idea how this is going to go. I do know, though, that we are meant here to be here for a reason. I know why we need to do this. And here's the thing is that here's the invitation to you all to stand up. We are self-managers now. The conditions are this. The next few months is going to look like perhaps this. It's going to be hard, it's going to be grind, and it's not going to be enjoyable. However, I cannot tell you what to do. You need to step up, or you have the choice to leave, in a sense. And so the invitation was now to them. And we said and I was there at the time, and it was just remarkable. And what we saw was that everyone in the team stood up and said, I'm going to commit to this process. I'm actually going to deliver, and I'm prepared to work overtime. I'm prepared to look at flyers and spread the word to get more revenue and buy-in from customers or bring on board new clients. It was quite an inspirational process. Long story short, they survived liquidation. They managed to generate the highest profit they have seen within 2 years in a time where the market's been tough for them, and ever since then they're still driving month-on-month profit. And what happened is that the team beforehand realized that we have the structures they have around 2 over here, 2 over there, etc., and been told what to do wasn't actually the most efficient way. Now we allowed them to take ownership over what this looks like in terms of their ownership and camaraderie between each other. They actually decided to go as a group between all the clients. And what they managed to do is actually add on margin to the quotes, so expanded the margin profitability. Happier clients, happier team, just by a simple tweak to their approach. And obviously the information coming through allowed them to see where they're on or off track by what's healthy and what's not. They're over-delivering their budget week on week now.
That's amazing.
Incredible, isn't it? And there's another person in the team that was terrified of losing her job to AI. Well, she's now the one that's leading the process of automating her own rollout so that she's freed up to add value to the system. And whether it's leading HR health and safety projects, leading revenue projects for another component of the business, it's like, holy heck, this wasn't designed a couple of months ago. So it's just extraordinary. And the senior leader in this space, his job was to hold the space, to hold the principles in place for a team member to stand up and deliver their best, or to hold each other accountable rather than coming in with, you should do this, you should not do that, etc. So it's allowing the system to self-organize based on the conditions we create.
That's an amazing story. That's crazy how this guy was about to lose his business and his team. And I guess the framework that you implemented around self-management basically saved his business, saved his team. I guess the question I have is, what happens to the role of a leader? Like, what does that look like? How does that change?
Such a good question. And this is self-management, yes, feels like a structure change. It's also an identity change. It's looking at the mindset and consciousness, because for someone to believe in people and motivate out of money, recognition, success, your systems and structures are going to reflect that, right? So you're going to look at individual bonus targets. Whereas if you're motivated by fairness and equality and so forth, then guess what? That compensation is going to look like a team bonus structure. So it's an interesting mindset that we have here, and to think about our worldviews. And this has application to a leader in this position. Now, rather than being the firefighter, the savior of the situation, etc., it's now actually having the senior leader has 3 main roles. One is that they are the public face of the company still, because the idea of self-management is very radical to a lot of organizations or others out there. And they won't understand it at first, and they want to touch base with the CEO or the senior leader or founder, for lack of a better word, just to get entry into the business. And then they realize down the track that, hang on, this is different. He's actually not the decision maker in this situation. I need to pass on to who is in the business. So that's one thing, the public face. The second thing is a senior leader will need, and this is probably the most important thing, hold the space. And this is a real testament at times to when crisis comes. Because when crisis comes, you're going to feel revenue pressure. You're going to feel cost and growth impacting up. In fact, with right now, the situation in the world, it's impacting a lot of businesses. And those instances is actually the reality of where you're at in the evolution of self-management's journey. If it's sustainable and resilient, guess what? Self-management is going to thrive in those conditions. If it's not and exposes more gaps, and the senior leader tries to remove holding the space and jumps in to save the day, then that's a testament as to where it is.
So when you say hold the space, do you mean provide the opportunity without interrupting and allowing the team to, I guess, take ownership, but to consult, to problem solve, to make decisions? So the leader's job is to hold that space and to enable it to happen.
100%.
And then obviously if the team is going off track, the whole point of self-management is they can self-correct.
Example. So example is there's a client that went through a point where someone wanted to make a decision, including spending company money. Now, there's a decision-making framework that's designed for this. And the idea of it is that anyone in a company can make a decision. And again, this depends on comfortability levels. These guys just went all for it. Anyone can make a decision, including spending company money. If you have an idea or proposal, you own that. But before you make that decision, you have to, one, speak to someone or many who's going to be impacted by your decision. So again, like if it's someone spending company money, in their case, it was going to impact the budgets for someone else, etc. Two, they have to talk to someone or others who's got expertise or experience in that matter. Now it comes back to the individual to make a decision. So you can imagine how well informed that individual is to make that decision going ahead, and people feel included. Like how frustrating it is when someone makes a decision on your behalf and you have no input or no engagement. The idea is that this is allowing the best external learning environment you could possibly have. And so this individual in particular skipped that process. And therefore, in this instance, that's when the senior leader, or for the lack of a better word, founder, whoever it is, notifies that and says, hey, you need to adhere to the frameworks that we've all agreed on, the decision-making framework. So going self-management is not actually the idea of losing control and chaos and so forth. It's like nature. It's like there's actually more control mechanisms in place, but the conditions allow faster decision-making, faster agility, faster adaptation into the market environment. So that's where the leader comes in, is to hold the space and ensure that adult-to-adult situation is in place. No one's coming in to say, oh, we need rules or frameworks or rules in place to stop people from doing things because someone stole that equipment or whatever the case is. That the leader comes in and say, hey, what's the framework to this? What's the self-correcting system that needs to ensure that we run smoothly, so that when, say, if our business is a garden, who's going to step up to take ownership of that, watering it? So, yeah.
I've got another case study to add to it, my own one. For those who don't know, Nick has been consulting me as well as education. And I remember the first time you shared this whole framework around self-management. Yeah. We haven't implemented it fully, but I've implemented bits of it, part of the recipe, part of the ingredients already in my team, and I've already seen results. For example, we've got an initiative where we help more Pacific people get into jobs. We have our systems, we have our processes, we have our tools for reporting, everything like that. But basically, I've left it to the team. I said, look, here's the goal. I says, these are the things I've equipped you with, the tools, information that you need. If you need any support, reach out to me. Otherwise, I'm trusting you guys to solve the problem and just help achieve the results. And if you need anything, I'm here. And we meet weekly and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, part of their solution, they came up with this on their own. Said, Pasi, for our last class, we're going to make it a graduation type feel. So we're going to have certificates and stuff. Could you come along and take the photos? It's like, yeah, sure, I'll come along and take the photos. Could you also share a few words? Yeah, I'm happy to share a few words. Just so you know, we've invited a recruitment agency to also come along, who are the ones that will give them the jobs, right? And they're going to guest speak. And I was just blown away. Like, they prepared, organized everything. I just came in, plugged in where they needed me to. And after that event, I was like, oh man, that was amazing. I told them, this is great. This is how I envision the team. Thank you guys. You guys are amazing. Said what I did. And then I got a message from one of the staff. He said, Pasi, and I posted on social media too. Thank you for coming in. Your time to take the photos, coming into the community, sharing a few words in there, it really means a lot. And I just wanted to say, your hard work is going unnoticed. The team see it, and you emulate some of the attributes of Jesus Christ. That's what she shared in her message. And I thought, whoa, that was powerful. Whoa. And that's a classic example. Like, I didn't do much. I didn't feel like I did anything. I just came in and did what they wanted me to. And I feel like at the end of the day, that's what the team needed, to feel empowered, to feel enabled, was just let them self-manage, just provide the things that they need to be able to do that.
Yes. And
it just, the culture, as well as the results, they go up hand in hand.
Yes.
The team are happy, and the results are coming.
There's no trade-off between productivity and culture.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. A lot of leaders think there is. You do structural changes, but then that's going to offset some product or some culture elements. But you focus too much on culture, forget about the structure, and again, that doesn't offset each other.
Yeah.
So you're right. Like, it's great to hear that they go hand in hand, and damn, that's a secret sauce, if anything.
Yeah. There's got to be a balance, right?
There's always a balance.
And you talk about self-management as a type of structure.
Yes.
It's not like there's no structure, do whatever you want.
Yes.
It's like there's structure, but it enables you to be self-governing.
100%.
Be self-leaders, right? You've shared this with me before, but I want you to share it with our audience. You don't have to go through a whole history lesson here, but so there's contrast between self-management structure versus non-self-management. There's multiple structures. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
If you can give us that nice journey around, how structures started to formulate with humankind and then where it is today, because where I want to go, I'm sure there's a lot of leaders who want that teal structure.
Yeah, 100%. And so I'll do the best I can. I may not give as much justice as I could. However, it starts to understand. I'll start again. The idea of a new organizational model that's emerging, or a new management paradigm that's emerging, is going to sound audacious, and it's going to sound ridiculous to a lot of people. And sure enough, I was in that same boat. Yeah, if you look at it from a historical context of humanity, going back hundreds of thousands of years, it's not that audacious or ridiculous at all. If anything, it makes total sense. Like 300 years ago, 400, 300 years ago, like generally speaking, there was kings and queens and high-level aristocrats that were actually running the countries. But then back then, people were saying that we're going to be governed by self-elected representatives. Now look at the world today. and so what happens is, if you look from that context, like, that makes sense. And so I would kick off that and now backtrack. 10,000 years ago was when there's a paradigm, a new consciousness that evolved. And humanity has a way of, we don't evolve like a caterpillar into a cocoon and butterfly. We seem to have this thing where we jump all together at once or not at all. Right? It's just one of those things. But the thing is, like, whenever there's a crisis in life, it requires a new consciousness. And what's that famous saying? You cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. And this exactly applies to the situation. So the idea of, and historians, philosophers, and so forth, they tend to agree on similar timelines. Where 10,000 years ago, there was the first breakthrough around the tribes, where the tribes started to scale to not just 150 plus people, it's now 100, thousands of people. That created division of labor. So you start to see a senior leader or an alpha person or individual come forward to take ownership of the people. And in that instance, this individual, and they say, like, I say you do, they drive through fear is a great motivator unlock, and it works, right? So in today's world, that still exists. Mafias, gangs, and so forth. Like, they operate with that same consciousness in a sense, with the way they collaborate.
Very autocratic.
They love impulsive environments. They love chaotic. They're very entrepreneurial and creative in times of chaos.
Yeah.
Yet there's no structure. So it's very much arbitrary. Like, they'll decide how much someone earns based on what they feel of the day, etc. And they'll protect those closest to them. So, and obviously expend those that aren't. So that was one breakthrough. And in today's world, that can be quite like icky in a way. But the same thing is that back then, that was a major breakthrough. Fast forward 6,000 years later was the next consciousness that started to come about. And this one learned from the previous consciousness and said, like, well done, you've created division of labor, etc., but it's still chaos. Like, we need more structure, we need more order, we need more discipline. And they figured out that rather than providing a motivation out of fear, it's like, how do we motivate people out of guilt? And there's a right and a wrong. Mm-hmm. So again, providing far more structure in place. And what they reflected within the structures is you have far more levels of hierarchy now built in. And it's built in by it could be your family birthrights, or like it's command and control structures where you have statutory reasons to be in that position. And what they tend to do is that with the layers of scale in place, they can now produce or develop projects that the previous model couldn't. I'm talking about pyramids. I'm talking about those churches you come across, those historic
Religion.
churches.
When you mentioned 6,000
Yeah.
years, that was the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like religion and all that.
There you
And there
go.
is like morals, right and
And
wrong.
exactly.
Commandments and stuff.
Exactly, and which is really clever because sense of belonging is so important. So imagine feeling guilty, being excluded from a sense of belonging. Even today's world, it's a survival instinct for humanity. So that was a major one, and they created replicable processes, standardization. They don't like change, so what happens this year is going to happen next year, and they're based on that model. Fantastic breakthroughs again. Fast forwarding the game with another, I think it was about 300 years ago, give or take, where the industrialized era came through. Now, they've learnt from the previous two structures. A new consciousness was starting to develop, and they recognized that yes, that structure is great to have in place, but you don't like change. And rather than looking at a right and a wrong, it's like, how do we actually use maths and science to start to figure out the world? And so rather than leveraging on fear and guilt, how do we unlock motivation through achievement and meritocracy? So you can be a janitor and now become a CEO. You don't have to be born into the prestigious title like it was in the previous position or previous.
So you can earn it.
Exactly. And achievement's quite a clever thing. So you start to see this new motivation as people are unlocking things through like shareholder supremacy, like unlocking value for your shareholders. Innovation has gone extreme, and don't get me wrong, like it's amazing what they've created. Unprecedented life expectancy, globalization, trade agreements that governments can never do, all this stuff that comes to life, and unprecedented wealth. So they've actually, this new consciousness was amazing, and what reflected through that is these organizations reflect that through that consciousness. So now they're starting to innovate within their structures. You've got IT departments, you've got HR departments, you have sales and a marketing department, a change program, and all that stuff, which again, the previous model didn't have the innovation to go there.
Different departments.
Exactly.
Starting to cluster each hierarchy. Is this where universities and schools also come into this era? You know, because you're earning qualifications, degrees, PhDs, you're a professor, and then that equates to some sort of role, career.
Yep. And here's the thing is, I'll get to at the end, is that it's a blend of most things combined. So you have, again, like if a fundamental assumption is that you need the experience or expertise to get you that promotion, then that holds within that mindset. If it's within the grade that you get, gives you that promotion, like if you've got a doctor's degree or a master's degree, then again, that's a previous conscious that said, great, you have this status, therefore you get this pay. So it blends in, yes, like education is a mix of it all. They have that previous conscious structure in place, and then they have innovation that comes with it. They're trying to innovate their business in many ways. Like they're bringing KPIs into some of their business models, right? So that was that model, that one that was designed like at the industry where they have KPIs in their businesses and so forth. So it's fascinating.
I know you haven't finished yet because you're still going through the journey, which is pretty cool. And I can start to see the parallel alignment between consciousness and also structure.
Yes.
And how they both evolve.
Yes.
Right? Over time.
Yes.
And I can see the patterns.
You know, its complexity is getting more
and more. This is just my own question. Like, what about government? What were their structures? Is that a blend, or is it like one of those structures that you...
Very much a blend. Very much a blend. So they very much have structure in place. Like if I haven't worked for the government, and however I've just heard based on what others have mentioned to me, they've got very much a lot of layers of hierarchy in place within their business. So it's very bureaucratic in a lot of ways. There's structure, conformity, reporting lines and so forth, trying to filter the information from the whole country into one. And yet at the same time, they bring about some consensus decision-making forums, right? So that's the next conscious again. They're looking at ways to measure progress. GDP is probably the most classic one. So that's a consciousness where they're trying to benchmark milestones as to a tangible output that the business or country in this case is performing. GDP per capita, whatever the case is. So yes, the consciousness is now made up of a lot of these backgrounds of...
Because it's compounded and evolved over time. That's to become what it is. It's a bit of this and that from the past.
It's like software. You
Right.
never lose the previous software version.
Just keeps updating.
It just updates on the layer again, on top of each other, to expose
But the
stuff to
traces are still there.
and now you can deal with
Yeah.
more complexity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And tell us the transition, because this is the ultimate one.
Yes,
This is
yeah.
the ultimate enabler.
Yes, yeah,
Right? The ultimate structure or the ideal.
Yes.
And this is the one that I really love. Can you explain that for our
Yeah. I just missed one, so I'll go there. But so the key thing here as well is that your worldview will also be determined in that moment of the context, because we've got a mix of everything. Your language gives it away. So, for instance, in that industrial era mindset, it's like the machine jargon that comes to life. So people will say input, output, efficiency, effectiveness, cascade, leverage, engine one, engine two. Gotcha. It's fascinating. So it gives away what consciousness you're using in that conversation and context of that moment. Fast forward. Now, this is more the 1970s, 1980s. There's a new consciousness that was created. And this one here is focused within organizations start to come to life with recognizing the previous predominant models today are neglecting values and neglecting empowerment and neglecting stakeholders versus shareholders. And they're looking for more family unison within their businesses. So quite often the language they give away is they'll describe the organization as we're a family, or like he's like the mayor, we're like a village, a community, he's like a brother to me, and so forth. So it's quite remarkable that gives it the indication as to what predominant mindset they're in. And yet what happens in these, and they move to this position because they want to over-index in culture. So social ventures, non-for-profits, businesses that go for B Corp, CSR. Now they have a smaller portion of the world's total market of entities, yet they're making a lot of noise. So you're starting to see these bigger entities that's coming on board with your CSR responsibilities, B Corp and so forth, because the voice they're making is demanding that pressure. The thing is, though, there's a catch. With that model is that they want everyone to be heard. And yet, so that requires consensus decision making. It requires value input and so forth. 360-degree feedback forms, great. So it's more system thinking. The thing is, decisions can take forever, and it becomes decision paralysis. And it's like, oh my God! But yet, decisions are the quickest things to get a company moving. So, and the other thing too is that in that metaphor of a family, is it right that if in my business I've got an employee who's my child and I'm the parent? And yet that individual's left school how long ago? Again, it's an uncomfortable dynamic. Yet this organizational structure has flipped the triangle. So they're trying to empower the frontline members, and they're saying you guys can make decisions, etc. So they're saying, well, let's go left. And yet they've still got hierarchy in place though, and the members at the senior leadership is like, well, we want to go right. There's another friction. So they haven't quite figured out how to unleash the people through self-management and make them fully powerful. Now, this is where the catch comes in. There's the latest model.
Before you go on to the latest model, just to give our audience an example there, because I love that you're talking about the structure. It's like an analogy of a machine. So output, results, KPIs, let's productivity, all of that. Then this other structure. It makes me think of like unions and HR. It's like, hey, it's not just all about work. Yes. You got to look after the people.
Yes.
That's where things like values and culture, HR and all of that come into place. So there's this almost conflict between finding the balance between we've got to get the work done, we've got to achieve results, we've got to make money versus, hey, don't forget to look after your people, don't forget the human side of business as well. Right? So that's what I think of, and a lot of businesses who might struggle with that, and that's why a lot of unions, they get in trouble with the union and all of that kind of stuff.
It's such a good point. Unions are the counterbalance to it. They're designed to keep the greed in check. They're designed to keep these businesses with arbitrary growth for growth's sake in mind, but looking at the performance on paper rather than people. So you're spot on, like that. That union is a great example of how they keep the safeguard around the humanity piece. So it's fascinating, isn't it? Like they're creating entities now in place to keep the balance alive.
But it also shows the consciousness of humankind has evolved as well.
There's no unions.
It's not just about work. Well, there was no HR, I'm sure, when industry started to think. It's just all about machines and
100%. HR is another one. It keeps the the people foremost.
Yeah.
What their pay structure's
Yeah.
like. But yes, 100%.
Yeah. And then, sorry, I interrupted you, but you're just about to introduce the ultimate one that we're all waiting for.
You would notice that over time, like imagine that model just before I mentioned of the flip triangle. Imagine having that 1,000 years or 10,000 years ago. Wouldn't have flied. The thing is that it wouldn't have flied because the context of the situation didn't require it. The complexity of the world, they didn't have AI at their disposal.
Zoom and all
that. They weren't receiving 50 emails on a Saturday 50 years ago. Like it's like what we are today. So the complexity of the situation didn't require that. Therefore, the output wasn't created. Now, as you progress through that timeline, complexity it's not complicated anymore, it's now complex. And the difference between complicated and complex, at least in my opinion, is a complicated is a human answer. You can have an airplane with 1 million parts, 1,000 pieces, yet there's a right answer to it with the blueprints and diagrams and so forth, engineers, mechanics, etc. Now, a complex situation is like a bowl of spaghetti. If you had a strand of noodle that you want to pull, you have no idea the repercussions of what the other noodles are going to do. Not even the most fanciest tech in the world is going to figure that out. That's complex. Like nature is complex. So what this new consciousness that's starting to come about is identifying one. They call this tier 2, and the other 4 examples I gave plus before that is tier 1. And the reason being is that it's not one is better than the other. It's like comparing a child to an adolescent. There's not one that's more important, but one can hold more complex thoughts and actions than another. And so the idea of the 4 worldviews, so to speak, before and now just described, they call it tier 1 because they believe their worldview is more valid than someone else's, and others are horribly mistaken. So, for instance, that one of the worldviews that's after profit, scale, growth, and so forth, they'll perceive the one that was after culture, values, and so forth as idealistic and woofy and so forth. But then that worldview also perceive this one as like greedy and exploitative of their work and not taking stakeholders into account. So again, it's just worldview tensions against each other. Tier 2 now comes in, and it looks at each of the other worldviews and actually says, you know what? You all have a partial truth to you and strength. You're actually incomplete without each other. And it said it comes down to the context of the situation and depending on what the strengths are of each of these worldviews and applying it to that situation. So that's a new consciousness that's coming about, and that is the one that can deal with the complexity of today's world. So they call it teal, self-management, whatever the case is. So this is a new construct that comes about it, and people now realize that we can actually, if we create an organization or our fundamental beliefs are linked to purpose, how does a purpose actually come to life? In my previous, a lot of examples I've been through, I've never heard a mission statement come to life in the heat of a discussion, an argument. If you're trying to make an important decision, like I've never heard it come to life. Like, how does it actually help us decide? It's usually a resort to market share, innovation, net revenue, whatever the case is. Wholeness is another breakthrough of this new tier 2 thinking. And wholeness is now capturing not just your professional rationale, masculinity that tends to drive a lot of the behaviors and discussion points at work. It's now unleashing your feminine side to balance that out. It's now looking at the emotional, spiritual connections of who you are to come to the table, because that's going to allow you to thrive within your creativity, within the safe space that can be created from it, and obviously tune you into this whole version of who you are. So, and the last piece is self-management. How to actually create distributed authority within the system so that individuals or collective self-managed teams, whatever that looks like, is close enough to the information to make a decision and respond at will. And like nature, there's no central command center that tells nature what to do when there's no rain. You don't see 2 trees come together to negotiate, this portion gets this rain, this portion gets that rain when it comes. They sense and respond, but they have self-correcting systems. So again, nature's really as a brilliant role model as to how it's actually survived and thrived in complexity. So yes, that's the new breakthroughs. And these organizations today Doesn't, and there are examples within profit, for-profit, non-for-profit, educational, healthcare, you name it, is already out there and thriving, and the results that come through is extraordinary.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love the way that you laid it out, and it just makes sense. And for those who didn't really capture that properly, we'll make sure there's an article as well that you can read about this later. But I think it's just nice to know the journey that humankind has come from, just to make sense around this. And obviously the world's different today than it was 10,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, which evolves a different type of leadership, kind of consciousness as well, especially with things like AI now.
Yeah.
You know, like it speeds things up. It's crazy,
Yeah.
the world that we live in. But look, I think we've shared a lot in this episode, which is powerful. I think one of the main things that we should also emphasize around what you shared with self-management is having a purpose, a story, and you've touched on this time and time again, so I just wanted to reinforce that. Just real quickly, before I ask my last questions, I spoke, because you and your mum helped me craft the purpose for Zeducation. Now, Zeducation's been around 5-6 years, and our purpose has always been somewhat the same, just repackaged and sound differently. But it's always been along the lines of like unleash your greatness. And then some stage we changed it and it sounded a little bit different, but it's always been around unleash your greatness. Yeah. After sitting down with you and your mum and just like asking me all these questions, and it just made me think deep, because I was just like, whoa, I've never been asked these questions before. And because my mind's always business oriented, and like, so talking about all this, what people might deem as fluffy and that can feel a bit weird. But once I got into it, basically you're just asking me to reflect and tell you guys my story.
Yeah.
And in my story were the ingredients to my purpose. And anyway, we crafted the purpose, which is now today, to unleash the potential of others so they can lead the next generation to greatness. Yes. And for me, that's what it's all about. Yes. Like, our life is short. 200 years from now, none of us are going to be here. Yeah. So the real question is, what are we building today that really matters and that will impact the next generation?
Yes.
Like that, Yes. We should be focused on that. So anyway, and then I was a guest speaker 2 weeks ago, and I shared my story. I shared the purpose. This is our purpose as Zeducation, but I shared the story that went with it. And I just remember the room was just tearing up, just like, whoa. I was like, that's it. But I feel like, people have always, even throughout years of time, like stories has always been a powerful part of humankind. And story has been one of the things that help us make sense of the world, but also helps us come together. Yes. And I feel like, if anything, over time, even though structure has changed, even though we've had to evolve our consciousness, I feel like story has become more and more important. Yes. It's the glue, So I just wanted to emphasize that, and you've touched on that time and time again around self-management. It's the key ingredient.
You're right. It's the why behind everything, like the why, and that unlocks intrinsic motivation. So, for instance, and correct me if I'm wrong, however, my fundamental belief is that organizations are designed to advance quality of life for people and planet.
Exactly.
And that the whole purpose of a founder creating something is with a mission. And it's going to, again, passing on that Olympic torch to someone else so that it can long outgrow and deliver value. And so it's the truth of it. And the thing is that a founder doesn't have to work to the end of their bones to keep this organization alive, to make all the decisions, to feel like they're creating the best structure, to look good externally, etc. It's actually, what if there was another structure that you hold the torch for the mission along with everyone else, and then what if you were then released to pursue your passion projects within the organization rather than trying to firefight everything and make sure everything's up to date and so forth. It's like, what if we unleashed the founder like everyone else in the business, which this structure is designed to do. Yeah. So 100%. But you're spot on. To do that though is unlocking intrinsic motivation, because if it goes extrinsic, this is where it's a theme I picked up from my personal perspective, where extrinsic will lead to if you want me to do more work, you need to pay me more. Or I'm burning myself out, I need a 4-day work week. Like it comes to this this package down the track, but it doesn't have to be. If the idea of a flip of a coin where self-management came into place, you've got the freedom to do what you need, but it comes with responsibilities. And it's a lot easier to hide from your boss than it is your colleagues. So watch social pressure kick into account. And so here's the thing is, and you have a healthy understanding, like a trajectory that the team are going towards, watch them mobilize and unleash. I can guarantee it. And sometimes crisis is almost the best way, almost. Doesn't always the case, but what I've noticed is that that's the true definition of where it's at. Like an organism. If an organism was dehydrated, guess the first thing you're going to do? You're going to get water to hydrate yourself. So it's like, how does the organism mobilize itself to bring in revenue? And naturally, and it's like natural hierarchies is now unleashed. It's no longer so hierarchy is not removed completely. It's now filtered into natural hierarchies, your strengths, your passions, and your interests, and then working within the domains that you need to do to provide value.
Yeah, I love that analogy around, you're wanting the business or the team or the organization to be a living organism.
Yes.
You look at living organisms, they're self-sustaining.
Yes.
They evolve, they adapt, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's basically what it is.
Yes.
And I think I love the power of self-management and stories, like especially purpose, because people they want to serve something beyond themselves. And I love that how story and purpose it enables people to be selfless.
Yes.
Because you can't achieve much of people being selfish. Like we're all just doing our own thing for our own gain. But if everyone's selfless, that's when we really get a big collective impact. And it strips the ego.
Yes.
It's not just about me. It's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about us. Eh? So look, just to wrap up this conversation here, thank you so much for just sharing that. Like you're the first person I've heard this from around this concept and this framework, the structure around teal and being self-managing. Already seeing amazing things in my business and my team, just implementing parts of it from what we've shared and what you've consulted me on. What are the two simple things that leaders can start doing today to start being to build self-managing teams?
Yes. One thing is asking the question of how is your pay structure holding back performance or driving performance? That's a big one. And the second one is, what is it about management today that hurts your integrity? So starting off with those two is going to unlock or unleash a lot of questions. And there's no right or wrong answer here. That's the thing. It's the idea of these questions is to really unearth the why behind it. And once that starts to come to life, guess what questions you're going to be asking? Like, what's my story? What's my why? Like, your story was brilliant. And once that's unlocked, watch the intrinsic motivation come to life, and the designs and structures of an organization come so much easier. It's not like it's a radical thought process around what's the risk associated to this and so forth. It's like, hang on, the fundamental assumption here is that people are trustworthy, they're smart enough, capable adults that can deliver, and just watch it prosper. Not always need to be those two questions, but those are ones I've noticed that can unlock a lot of information from within.
Amazing. And finally, if people want to learn more or get in touch with you, some of your services, self-management, all that good stuff, how can they get in touch?
Yes, so company is called Iceberg, and you'll find the website on www.iceberg.com. You can search for me on LinkedIn, Nicholas Thomson, Iceberg, etc. And it would be a privilege to help organisations go through it. And I'm at a point where it's turned into a collective intelligence. So the idea here is that it's not just transforming your business and let you fly with it. It's actually what you're enabling is a new consciousness that's inspiring organizations and industries outside of your realm. So I've got, at the moment, there's a good mix of farm, construction, Sparky, Arborist, etc. Like, these industries I never thought I'd be working with, and yet here they are with the similar tensions. And the idea is actually to get them to see each other's businesses, because the same tensions are across everything. And anyway, so without me rambling on too much, it's the idea here is that this is actually bigger than we realize. And and it's going to require a new consciousness and mind shift to deal with the complexity of today's world. Otherwise, we're going to default to the traditional ways that has worked for us in the past, absolutely, yet it's built as a foundation to learn and grow from now. So, yes, it'd be a pleasure to work with people.
Awesome. And he does also have a community as well.
Yes.
So feel free to join that community. But look, Nick, founder of Iceberg, thank you for your time. We're much better for it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Pasi.
Thank you for tuning in to the Zeducation Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to follow and subscribe for more episodes like this.